in this week's video, we're going to be having a look at Lee Falk's original story called The Island of the Dogs. Now, this is a reprint done by Hermes Press, and it is number 13 of the series. Now, this is also the 4th episode of my podcast called The PHAN. And in this episode of The PHAN, we're going to be having a look at that book. We're going to be discussing sort of what happens in each chapter, what happens with the main characters in the book, and I hope you enjoy. And you can catch all the podcasting episodes on Anchor, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and a whole lot of other ones. And they're also published on YouTube. So yeah, if you want to go watch the last couple, we've already made 3 podcasts right now, and quite recently they're going pretty well, I think. So we'll get into this book. My review of this book will obviously be up later, either later today or tomorrow. So yeah. So in the first page we have an encounter with the Phantom. In the last couple of months I've been reading this book, and recently obviously I've finished it. I finished it like a couple days ago. I only had a couple of days, I only had a couple of pages left in the book, and yeah, I just finished it. You're probably wondering, because you probably saw the news segment on Saturday or Friday, where I talked about this book in particular, on how many pages I was up to. So I was basically up to, I think, the 3rd or 4th last page to be finishing the book. So yeah, so it has contents in the book, obviously, with it being a Hermes Press book. It's a beautiful production by Hermes Press. I've actually got 2 of these books in this series, and the other book is the one that comes after this. It is The Assassin. Now, it has a prodigal. It has a phantom basically talking about the law and the how the Phantom came about and all that sort of stuff. And that is done by there's a bit of an article about the Phantom, and that is done by Francis Laquesson, lecturer from Saint-Bonnet, Paris, France. And I think there may be something to do with Lee Falk in this issue. And then the prodigal talks about how the Phantom came about, how the Phantom has been living for 400 years and still going, and basically the mystery around the Phantom, everything from the law to the Skull Cave to the centuries, and basically. And that was done by Lee Falk back in New York in 1974. That was like a thing by Lee Falk. And now we get into chapter 1. Chapter 1. So basically what happens in chapter 1, there's these 2 tourists, and they're on this big charter yacht from which is called the Scottish Pride. Now it's moving smoothly through the sea, and the bow nodding into the easy swell. Now, as we look through the next couple of pages, we actually get to see there's a lot of the times when we actually get to see this book, if you have read it, you know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of drama in it, and this story in particular, I have not read. I haven't read it as of much, and it's a good thing to have in your collection. It's a good thing to have a reprint of a series that you probably don't even have the originals. Like, an old collector may have the originals. He may not want to sell it for 50 years or something. So it's pretty cool to actually have a replica like this, and you can actually read the stories that were printed back in 1970 by, I think, Avon. Yeah, so this series is obviously from the Avon books back in the 1970s, either 1970s or 1960s. And Hermes Press has obviously reprinted it, and it's a great series. Only because I've got 2 books of the series, I'm looking to get some more in the future. So basically, what happens in chapter 1 is that they basically, well, the captain of the ship is basically telling them about the Phantom. Now, what happens in to the tourists? They're basically talking about the Phantom. The chapter 1 only goes for a couple of pages, and then we get into chapter 2, and that chapter 2 is where they're approaching shallow waters, largely uncharted, too dangerous to run in the dark. Now, a lot of times in this chapter, we're going to be seeing a big story plot of how the island has been feared by locals and natives around the superstition of it being an island where it used to have dogs on it. Now we get the generations of men had been bringing stray dogs, and they eventually had to fight out each other to basically remain supreme and to basically survive as always. And now, at this point of the story, we don't actually know what's actually truly happening in the island itself. Now, as the tourists are getting off the boat, they get to an island called the Island of Dogs. And we've already talked about how the Island of Dogs is feared by natives and superstition, all that sort of stuff. But the tourists, they find a peculiar thing that's happening on the island. It says, there's a sign saying, private property, keep off, trespassers will be shot. Now, this is where it basically gets a little bit, it's getting a bit dramatic right now. So we have in chapter 3, chapter 2, the end of chapter 2 was basically saying trespassers, you're going to get shot if you're trespassing on our property. Now, at this time, we do not know, as I've said, we do not know who is under this conspicuous of being held against their will or who owns this island as of yet. But then the 2 tourists and the shipman actually go to a reception at the residence of the Lord Mayor of Matuan. It has the police chief Togando, General Togando, Chief Justice Togando, Okan Togando, and, well, whose only title was Chairman of the Bengala Bank, and another guy who's the publisher of the daily newspaper, and Colonel Randolph Weeks from the Jungle Patrol. So these 2 tourists, they go over to Randolph Weeks. They basically describe what they saw and how it has been done in a matter of fact. And basically, in the next couple of pages, in the next couple of chapters, we actually see Randolph Weeks, which is obviously Colonel Weeks, and they basically have to send a sort of... And in the amongst of all that happening, we have natives going onto island and one gets shot. Because they don't know about shotguns, they don't know about mortar guns, they don't know about basically they don't know about any military weapons or anything like that. And then I think we're up to chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 4. And they're still talking about the Island of Dogs with Colonel Weeks. Colonel Weeks confronts Lenio Krabby, which, as we all know, he's obviously protecting the people that are owning or people that are maintaining the island and trying to make it into something. The lawyer is basically hiding information that he doesn't want to basically give out. He doesn't want to give out, and Colonel Weeks then turns to a young private called Riggs. Riggs then sounds the sound of a message goes through the kettle drums of the jungle, and the Phantom is picked up the phrase and passed on to the Phantom. And long ago call, long ago dead, long ago hurt. So basically, the Phantom gets into it. In the next couple of chapters, we actually see the Phantom. Janice Helm, the daughter of the guy that's supposed to be owning the island, which is Major Helm, and we get to find out what actually happens to him later on. But Janice Helm is sitting at a swimming pool, and there's these two big guys, and they describe what Janice Helm's been through and all that, her backstory and all that sort of stuff. And she basically, there's these two big blokes. So there's these two big hitmen, and they've basically come to get Janice Helm and basically held her for ransom, basically. And then the Phantom, in the next couple of chapters, he basically says, "Let the girl down. Put your hands in the air. Don't move. Freeze." The guy with the moustache snatched the gun, and that was in fast draw shoulder holster. And then they go through the science of how the Phantom is all fast and faster than lightning and all that sort of stuff. So the two big guys, they obviously get overpowered and are basically tied up while the Phantom realizes and took steps to halt it. So the Phantom basically gets rid of the hitman. The hitman are down by the 7th chapter, I think. 8th chapter. And then we have Jungle Patrol Headquarters. Colonel Weeks cradled the phone softly. He recognized the voice. There was no other like it. Riggs had found that out, because Riggs, a couple of chapters ago, he nearly found out who the commander was. Now, the commander, as everyone knows, it's the Phantom, it's the ghost who walks, it's Mr. Walker, and Riggs meets him, but doesn't see him. He hears him, but doesn't see him. So, yeah, that's just a little bit of psychology there. So, yeah. And basically, the Phantom piles the two guys up. He then goes after one of the guys, and then finally we get to chapter 9, and it's where the Phantom is basically, in the last couple of chapters, it gets really, really intense. So in the last couple of chapters, it's really intense, and that the guys on the island, the Island of Dogs, have made rapid progress and are getting nearer and nearer to the stationary train. Now, the Phantom, he's going in the shadow, he's working his work, he's going in there, and he basically, by the end of chapter 10, obviously, by the end of chapter 10, there is, well, obviously Riggs and Janice Helm are also there. They got by there by speedboat. Janice Helm and Riggs are not having a good time. They're basically fighting each other, but they're fighting in words, not actually movements. And so basically at the end of the story, we have the Phantom basically evacuates the island. He uses pressure to make sure the general complies by the Phantom's orders, and we have the island is basically explodes, and the general's pretty trying to think, if this island doesn't explode, we will get boats back there and we will start where we left off. Now, the island does explode, the plant explodes, and luckily the island was evacuated, obviously, by the Phantom. And the Phantom had already set multiple ammunitions and dynamite in the ammunitions case, like in the spot where they held all the stuff. Now he's already set off 2 missile launchers. They've already ran havoc over the island, and then when the island is evacuated, it goes all up in flames. And nowadays there's no island there, I think. So the Phantom basically he gets the general and the people that own the island, he gets them to basically evacuate the island. They go back to the country, and the general, because the country where the general's from, they do not like disobedience. They hate disobedience. And so the general's in the good now. He's always in the good now. And he's made sure he's in the good now because he's evacuated his army, and he's evacuated everyone on the island, so there's no casualties. And if you would like to subscribe to the PhantomCave YouTube channel, you can do so down below. And if you would like to look at the other episodes of the PHAN, you can go on to Anchor, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and all those platforms. And as always, keep PhantomCaving, and we'll see you next time on the PhantomCave YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time on the PHAN. You can break me down, but